Senator Stevens is a very strong supporter of early education, and he's supported additional funding for programs like Head Start as vigorously as he can. However, I believe that he would not favor creating a universal pre-kindergarten program funded with federal dollars when we have such serious deficiencies in funding for programs like the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Frankly, we simply do not have enough federal discretionary dollars to go around and adequately deliver the resources that we need for the programs that the federal government has already indicated it has a responsibility for. So for those low-income parents and students who don't have other alternatives, Senator Stevens would support continuation and expansion of funding for programs like Head Start. But as far as creating a new universal program, until we can adequately fund the jobs that we're trying to do right now, I do not believe he would support expanding that role.
Thank you, Liz. Mark?
Thank you very much. I actually talked about this a little bit ago. I think it's a critical need in our country. And when you think about it, when I travel around the state and I talk to, usually I like to go to hospitals, schools, senior centers. Those are the places I like to drop by and see. When I talk to principals, I talk to teachers, there is no question what one type of program will have an impact on a student's life as they move through the system, and that is pre-K. There is not one data point that tells us anything different. And to hear, and I know that you're speaking for Senator Stevens, but it's not discretionary dollars. 0 to 5, when we spend more resources in that area, we get a 1 to 8 return. The issue of No Child Left Behind, why do we have that? Because in the early years we failed. And when you think of 0 to 5, and I can tell you, again, as a parent of a 6-year-old, the impact it had on him, we were fortunate, we could afford it. Head Start has been flat funded. Actually, there's a mixed record of Senator Stevens supporting the funding of this program. And if we do not put the resources in this area, we pay for it later on in a variety of areas. I can talk to teachers and you can talk to them and principals and they will tell you, by 1st grade you start to see the kids that did not have pre-K. By 3rd grade you see starting self-selection out. By 7th and 8th grade they're moving on in other arenas and dropping out. It is the right investment. I know this from the work we're doing here in Anchorage. One of the programs my wife put together was ABC Ready to Read. Why is that important? Making sure every kid reads with their guardian, their parent, whoever is an adult in their life, because we know reading in the early years makes a difference for a young person to be successful in the future. Why are our libraries being developed as learning centers, not just checking out books? Because we know, again, early learning makes and has an impact. And so I don't believe it's discretionary. And I see it's a huge and right kind of investment that we've missed, and we wonder why. We have all these challenges with young people. We live in the 21st century with many challenges in families. For us not to invest in those early years where we know the payoff is 1 to 8, we know it. Why not put the resource there? And it's not about government control. It's about taking some of those resources and giving to local communities so they can decide how to make sure they have a good program for those early years of those kids.
Thank you. The next question we'll start with Bob. A huge responsibility that all educators have is preparing our students to participate in the global community. What are your top 3 foreign policy issues to facilitate a strong global community?
Well, I'm a little bit tired of hearing about the global community or global economy simply because it's as if it just happened. But the Spanish brought it in the 1500s. Our revolution in the 1700s was caused by a global economy, with the British bringing tea all the way from India and wanting to dump it on us because it had a limited shelf life. There's nothing new in this global economy. Well, things are sped up a little bit, but the 2 weeks or 2 hours, it doesn't make much difference. We've been on a global economy for 500 years. The term is a catchphrase to really try and get you to think that we need to hold hands like in the Kyoto Agreement, and that somehow that we need to have a world oversight. And when I see the North American Free Trade Agreement and the General Agreement on Tariff and Trades, which was passed by a lame duck Congress in 1994 after the Republican stampede, there's no way it was going to pass after that stampede had been sworn in on January 3rd, 1995. We have surrendered our sovereignty We have surrendered our sovereignty to world bureaucrats who basically come and dictate to our Congress what our trade rules should be. So I'm not quite sure if you wanted to know about trade, if you wanted to know about education, if you wanted to talk about environment. I want the United States to pay its own bills and stay home. I think you'll have a real good answer from Mr. Young here, and I salute him. It was about 10 or 15 years ago. They wanted to have a World Heritage Park here in Alaska, and to basically remove control of that park, even from our Congress. And I don't trust our Congress 5,000 miles away, but I'll be jolly well happy to have that than I will to have somebody in Geneva, Switzerland tell us how to manage this. So I am very, very leery of anything regarding global and so forth. And to me, it's a trap. And so it was vague enough. I'd be glad to talk about foreign policy and all that sort of stuff. But if we're talking in general terms, I'm generally wanting to take a more humble approach to the federal government.
Thank you. Liz?
Well, if I understand the question correctly, it's what can the schools do to function in the global community? And I believe that we are kidding ourselves. Senator Stevens would believe that we are kidding ourselves if we don't think that we live in a global economy and world. We need to prepare our students to live within that universe. They need to understand world geography and world history. They need to learn other languages than English. And they need to understand how to deal with an economy where we are no longer really self-sufficient ourselves. So I think basic grounding in those kinds of things would be a very important item to be brought into the schools.
I think I understand the same way Liz does. I hope we've got your question right. And that is, when you think about it with students today, and even when I was going through the high school system, we live in a global world in the sense of how we have to interact with folks. And Bob, I recognize you want to be a lot more isolationist, but the reality is, when you think of where Alaska sits in the world, we're a piece of the puzzle. Look at our cargo out here. We're the third largest cargo hauler in the world. It comes through this community. Wide employees out the airport, over 10,000 jobs. When you think of our military bases, there's a reason why they're here. They're here because we can do rapid response around the globe. So we have to recognize we are part of the international and what goes on in this world. We're not isolationists anymore. The thing, I guess, is a couple pieces I'd like to make sure students understand. One is how our economy is interwoven, how everything is part of it. What we do here in our community has an effect globally. When you think of our fishing industry, that's just not about Alaska's fishing industry, but it is part of the food chain of this world and this country. It has a direct impact. Or you think of our energy policy and what we do when we export oil or gas out of our community. Where does that go? It's part of the global economy. And making sure people understand that it's all interconnected. When you think of the issue of climate change, this is an issue where Alaska is ground zero. We are the result of no energy policy in this country and a lack of results or activity around this globe of how to deal with this in a long-term picture. So I think we as Alaskans have a huge opportunity to show how to do it right, how to develop an energy policy, not only for our state but for our country that will have international impact. When you think of our non-renewable resources we have here that are fantastic, we also have some great examples all around the state of renewable energy being developed through young people, through entrepreneurs, through our universities, as well as new technologies. So I think we have a role, and I would hope young people of today would think about how we fit into this global world that we live in the sense of climate change, our economy, how we are centered in the issues of Alaska as a national defense component.
Thank you, Don.